The Maybach glided through the neon-lit streets of Seoul, a bullet of black slicing past scooters, street vendors, and the smell of sizzling tteokbokki. Imani kept her arm linked with his, trying not to stare too openly at the way his broad shoulders cut through the city's chaos like a predator moving through prey. "You really like chaos, don't you?" she asked, voice laced with teasing suspicion. "Depends on the company," he murmured, eyes on the road. "Some chaos is worthwhile." She smirked, daring. "Worthwhile, huh? You do know I'm about to take you into a war zone. Chicken feet. Spicy rice cakes. Street carts that have seen more mischief than your entire conglomerate." He didn't flinch. "Perfect." The car slowed to a crawl as they entered the heart of Myeongdong. The air was a mix of smoke, chili, and sweet pastries. Crowds pressed in from all sides, but everyone seemed to instinctively part for the black Maybach, as if sensing the danger contained within it. Jin-woo stepped out first, then offered his hand to help her down. Imani hesitated for half a beat, then accepted. His fingers closed over hers, warm and commanding. She tugged her arm free, ready to declare her independence, but the spark in her chest reminded her. The game had already begun. "Lead the way, Queen of Chaos," he said softly, his lips twitching in a half-smile. "I'll follow." She rolled her eyes, grinning despite herself, and wove through the crowd, pointing at the first stall with a sizzling grill. "This is where the night begins. Brace yourself, Mr. Han. Street food is the ultimate test of character." He watched her, amused, studying every tilt of her head, every sway of her hips. "Character test," he repeated, low and dangerous. "I'm not sure if I'm more terrified or intrigued." "Both," she said with a wicked grin, picking up a skewer of tteokbokki. "Eat. Don't be shy. But warning, if you can't handle spice, you will cry in front of me. I will mock you mercilessly." Jin-woo accepted the skewer, raising an eyebrow. "Cry," he repeated, then bit into the rice cake. Heat exploded across his tongue. His eyes went dark, a dangerous shimmer flashing across them. He swallowed slowly, then reached across and lightly touched her arm. "You like to torture me," he murmured. "Do I?" Imani teased, savoring the fiery burn herself. "Or do you like to be tortured?" He smiled, small, predatory, his teeth flashing. "Both." The crowd thinned slightly, curious glances darting at them. But neither cared. The air between them was heavy, electric, thick with the promise of a war neither wanted to admit they were enjoying. "You know," Imani said, sidestepping a group of teenagers filming a TikTok dance, "most men would have cried, whined, or called for their chauffeurs by now." He leaned close, so close she could feel his breath against her ear. "Most men aren't me," he whispered. "And most women aren't you." Her stomach flipped, heat rushing into places that had nothing to do with the tteokbokki. She tried to pull her gaze away from his, but it kept snapping back to the dark, impossible depths of his eyes. "And what does that make me?" she asked, daring him, chest rising with a sharp inhale. He tilted his head, studying her like a chessboard. "The Queen," he said finally, voice low, dangerous, as if saying it aloud somehow made it true. Imani laughed, sharp and wild. "Good. Then it's about time I started ruling the castle." He let her lead through the night market, watching, guarding, and smiling that dangerous, knowing smile only she had managed to provoke. And in that chaos of smells, noise, and neon lights, for the first time, both of them realized the game wasn't about control anymore. It was about surrender. But who would surrender first? Imani weaved through the crowded stalls, a crimson slash in the neon chaos, daring Jin-woo to keep up. He matched her pace effortlessly, shoulders brushing against hers now and then, just enough to make her shiver without a word. "Stop looking at me like that," she snapped suddenly, tossing a skewer of spicy rice cake into her mouth. Her eyes were dark with defiance, but her pulse betrayed her. "Like what?" Jin-woo asked smoothly, voice low. "Like I want to eat you alive?" She choked, more on instinct than spice, coughing and waving her hand in front of her mouth. "You don't say things like that." He laughed, low and dangerous, letting the sound vibrate close to her ear as they moved through a stall selling steaming bowls of tteokguk. "Why not?" he murmured. "You look tempting when you're mad." Imani's cheeks heated. She threw a napkin at him. "You're impossible. And I'm not tempting." Jin-woo caught it midair, smirking, letting it flutter to the ground. "Not yet," he said, then leaned closer, close enough that she felt his warm breath brush her temple. "But I intend to change that." She whipped around, pressing her back against the edge of a vendor's cart, eyes flashing. "Change what?" "I don't know who told you this, but I never give in to billionaires with tattoos and dangerous eyes." "Never?" he echoed, tilting his head amused. I heard that before. Doesn't usually last long. She scoffed, rolling her eyes, but her pulse betrayed her words. Maybe you'll be the exception. Maybe I like exceptions, he said softly, his gaze holding hers like a vice. Especially when they have the audacity to smile at waiters and scold me at the same time. The corners of her lips twitched. She shook her head, exasperated. You're insane. And I hate it. And yet, he said, leaning just slightly closer, you're still here. She looked away, pretending to study a nearby stall selling honey-glazed squid. That's strategy. Strategy? He repeated, tone teasing, moving just close enough that the tips of their shoulders brushed. You've got fire, Miss Banks. But you underestimate me. She spun toward him, pointing a perfectly manicured finger. Underestimate you? Huh. I know exactly who you are. I know how many people you could crush in a heartbeat. And I don't care. You can't scare me. He studied her, that predator's gaze softening just fractionally, as if he were savoring her fire. Good, he said, voice dropping. I wouldn't want to scare you. I want to earn you. Her breath caught in her throat. Earn me? She repeated, eyes narrowing, daring him. And how exactly do you plan on doing that in a crowded street market? Jin-woo tilted his head, one dark brow raised, and smirked. With patience, charm, and maybe a little chaos. Her laugh was sharp, incredulous, but carried an undertone of thrill she refused to acknowledge. Chaos, huh? I know the perfect place for that. Try this, she said, grabbing a stick of chicken feet and holding it out like a gauntlet. He stared at it, expression unreadable for a heartbeat, then bit into it. His eyes narrowed, the heat hitting his senses. He swallowed slowly, then met her gaze with that same dark, intense look that made her knees weak. You do realize, he said slowly, that if I survive this, you will owe me a rematch? Imani laughed, bold and wild, stepping closer so the distance between them was charged electricity. Rematch? You're going to need more than a street market to win this game, Mr. Han. I'm counting on it, he murmured, voice low, almost a growl, as they moved deeper into the chaos of Myeongdong. And under the neon lights, the heat, the smells, and the throngs of people, they realized something. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a battlefield, and neither of them planned to surrender. The market thrummed around them, sizzling woks, shouting vendors, neon signs flickering over the sea of people. But in their bubble, the world had narrowed to just two. Imani tossed a skewer of spicy rice cakes toward him with a flourish. Try not to choke, billionaire. Jin-woo caught it midair, unbothered, and took a deliberate bite. Heat exploded across his tongue. He swallowed slowly, eyes locking with hers. Delicious, he said, voice low, almost dangerous. Spicy. Bold. Unpredictable. She smirked, a wicked glint in her eyes. Sounds familiar. He took another step closer. Too close. Too deliberate. The crowd seemed to melt away around them, leaving only the sound of their rapid heartbeats and the faint sizzle of the nearby food stalls. You know, she said, waving her skewer at him, most men would have backed off after the first sign of danger. Danger? He echoed, tilting his head. I don't see danger. I see challenge. And you, Imani Banks, are a very dangerous challenge. Her pulse skipped. She straightened, daring him with her eyes, but the heat in her chest betrayed her. You mean you like me? He leaned just slightly, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. I don't like, he said softly, voice a dangerous growl. I want. And I don't want to share. She laughed, breathless but defiant, and swiped at a bit of chili sauce on her lip with her thumb, unthinkingly brushing it across his hand when he moved to stop her. The contact, brief and electric, made both of them freeze for a heartbeat. Careful, she whispered, a teasing edge to her voice. You're dangerously close to being my dinner instead of eating it. He smirked, letting his gaze roam over her lips and back to her eyes, dark, predatory, and utterly magnetic. Maybe I'm already hungry, he murmured, voice so low it brushed her eardrum, making her pulse spike. She stepped back, only half successfully, because there wasn't much room between them in the crowded street, and threw her arms up. Stop with the ridiculous charm. It's illegal in half the countries on this continent. Illegal? He repeated, advancing just slightly, each step measured. I make the laws I break. And tonight, I'm breaking them all for you. Her breath hitched. She knew she was playing with fire, but she refused to admit how much she wanted to. You're insane, she whispered, voice trembling despite herself. Absolutely insane. And yet, you stayed, he said, tilting his head, eyes burning with intensity. You didn't run. She swallowed hard, cheeks flushed from heat, spice, and something far deeper. Maybe. I like a little danger, she muttered, almost to herself. A slow, dark smile spread across his face. Good. Because I plan to give you a lot of it. They moved together through the market, side by side, elbow brushing elbow, shoulder brushing shoulder, each accidental touch sending jolts of heat through them. Vendors eyed them nervously, sensing the unspoken tension that seemed to crackle in the air like electricity. Then it happened. A drunk tourist stumbled, knocking over a small cart of soju shots. Instinctively, Jin-woo caught it mid-fall, steadying it with one arm, but in doing so, he pressed her gently against him. His chest was warm, solid, a dangerous weight she felt against her own. Imani's breath hitched. She pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the hard muscle under the wool coat. You're insane, she whispered, almost lost to the moment. And yet, he murmured, leaning down just slightly, you're still here. Still challenging me. Still smiling at me like a fire I can't resist. Her heart thundered in her chest. You're impossible, she said, eyes flashing, breath shaky. I know, he said, voice low, dangerous, predatory. And I love it. The crowd moved around them, oblivious to the storm between the billionaire and the queen of chaos. Every glance, every brush of skin, every word was a battle. Neither would surrender. Not yet. And neither would ever forget the night the chaos of Myeongdong became a battlefield of hearts, desire, and unspoken war. The smell of sizzling chicken feet and sweet soy wafted through the air as Imani led Jin-woo to a cramped stall at the edge of the market. Neon signs flickered overhead, casting the world in garish reds and blues, but they barely noticed. Their universe had shrunk to just the two of them. Welcome to culinary chaos, she said, sliding onto the narrow bench. If you survive this, you might just earn a medal. Jin-woo smirked, brushing his fingers along the edge of the table as he leaned closer than etiquette, or anyone else, would allow. Medals are fine, but I prefer rewards, he murmured, his gaze dark, intense, fixed entirely on her. She narrowed her eyes, smirk fighting a blush. Rewards, huh? That sounds very dangerous. Dangerous is my specialty, he replied, leaning in slightly. The heat from his body pressed against hers, the faint scent of sandalwood and rain wrapping around her senses. Every inch between them crackled with electricity. She tried to focus on the food. A steaming plate of tteokbokki sat between them, fiery red, spicy enough to sting lips and tongue alike. She stabbed a piece with her chopsticks and held it out. Try this, she challenged. Jin-woo picked it up with a chopstick, letting it hover near her lips. I could, he said, voice low and teasing. But that would defeat the purpose of you feeding me. Her pulse skipped. She leaned back slightly, pretending to assess the food, though she could feel the heat radiating from him, the predatory focus of his gaze. Fine, she said through gritted teeth, but don't get used to it. I don't usually feed people who try to dominate airports. Yet here I am, he murmured, finally letting the rice cake touch his lips. He chewed deliberately, savoring the spice, then swallowed slowly. Hot, fiery, tempting. Imani's hand froze midair. You are impossible, she said, lips twitching into a reluctant smile. And yet, he said softly, leaning closer so that their knees brushed, you're still here. Still feeding me. Still challenging me. She tried to keep her voice steady. Don't flatter yourself. I'm only here because I have to eat. And because I'm curious. His smirk deepened. Curious? About me? Maybe, she admitted, her tone sharp but revealing more than she intended. The space between them shrank imperceptibly. His hand hovered near hers, not touching, but the energy in the moment made it feel like it had already. You know, he said, voice dropping, I don't often do this. Wait. Chase. I usually get what I want by other means. And yet, she whispered, locking eyes with him, you're doing this. Yes, he said, his gaze dropping to her lips for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Because you're not like anyone else. Her breath caught. She wanted to laugh, to push him away, to call him insane. But the truth was she was drawn to him. Dangerous, impossible, infuriatingly magnetic Jin-woo Han. And she hated it. The night market was chaotic around them, but here, at this tiny stall, time had slowed. Every look, every brush of a knee, every word was a gamble. Neither would surrender, yet neither could deny the pull between them. And for the first time that night, amidst the neon, the smell of fried food, and the press of the crowd, Imani Banks realized that the cage Jin-woo had built didn't feel like a trap anymore. It felt dangerously like home. Imani picked up a steaming chicken foot with her chopsticks and held it out like a challenge. "Eat it," she said, smirk daring him to refuse. Jin-woo raised an eyebrow, leaning closer than necessary. "Eat it from your hand?" he murmured, the faintest teasing curl on his lips. She rolled her eyes, but her hand didn't shake. "Don't be dramatic. It's just chicken feet." His fingers brushed hers as he took the piece, a deliberate, electric touch. Both froze for a heartbeat, aware of every nerve, every spark. The noise of the market, the shouting vendors, sizzling woks, the chatter of tourists, faded into the background. All that mattered was the proximity, the heat between them. "You're enjoying this far too much," Imani said, trying to mask her racing pulse behind a veneer of sarcasm. "Enjoying," he echoed, voice low rough. "I'm savoring it. Every second. Every look. Every challenge." She shivered slightly, despite herself. The combination of his scent, sandalwood, rain, and something darker, and the closeness made her heart hammer. "You know," she whispered, voice a dangerous mix of teasing and breathless, "this is unfair. You trap people in airports, chase them across the city, and then this." "This?" He leaned in subtly, his knee brushing hers. The accidental touch sent a jolt through her. "This is the most honest part. No games. No crowds. Just us. You. Me. And the danger you insist on chasing." Her lips parted slightly. She wanted to protest, to step back, but each step felt heavier, magnetized. "You're impossible," she breathed. "And yet," he murmured, voice dropping so low it tickled her ear, "you can't look away." She blinked, heart stuttering. I'm not lying," he finished for her, leaning just a fraction closer. Their faces were inches apart now. The spicy aroma of food, the warmth of the market, and the heat from his body wrapped around her senses, making rational thought impossible. Her pulse thumped violently. She should have stepped back, she should have asserted control. But the moment was suffocating, delicious, and she couldn't move. "Careful," she whispered, her voice shaking slightly despite her bravado. "You're dangerously close to." Before she could finish, Jin-woo's hand brushed hers again, this time lingering. The contact was brief, but enough to make her chest tighten. He tilted his head, eyes locking on hers with that same predatory intensity she couldn't resist. "Close enough to taste," he murmured, the corner of his mouth twitching into a dangerous smirk. Her breath caught. She could smell him now, feel the heat radiating off him, and something raw and unspoken passed between them. A promise, a challenge, a tension that neither would break, but neither could ignore. She finally managed to pull her hand away, laughing shakily to mask the way her body betrayed her. You're insane. Absolutely insane." "And yet," he said, voice dark and low, leaning just slightly closer, "you're still here. You didn't run. You didn't scream. You stayed." Her pulse raced. "Because I like danger," she admitted, almost to herself, voice soft but steady. "And I plan to give you plenty," he whispered, letting his words hang in the humid night air between them. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the noise of the market returning slowly around them, but the heat between them remained, thick and electric. No one moved, no one spoke, and the world outside their bubble ceased to exist. And in that suspended moment, Imani Banks realized something terrifying and thrilling. Jin-woo Han wasn't just chasing her. He was unraveling her, piece by piece, with every look, every touch, every word. The neon lights flickered across Imani's crimson dress as she leaned back slightly, trying to regain control. Jin-woo didn't give her a chance. His gaze pinned her in place, black and unyielding, a storm beneath his calm surface. "Stop teasing me," she breathed, even though her body betrayed her words with a shiver. "I'm not teasing," he said, voice low, dangerous, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath on her cheek. "I'm testing limits." Her fingers tightened around her chopsticks, pretending to adjust them as a shield, but it was useless. Every inch between them felt alive, charged, almost unbearable. A street vendor shouted from behind them, knocking over a basket of skewers. Imani flinched, instinctively stepping back, right into him. The collision was gentle but electric. Jin-woo's arms moved instinctively to steady her. Their foreheads nearly touched, her pulse hammering in her ears. She tried to pull away, but he didn't let her. His hands rested lightly on her waist, holding her close enough that the world seemed to vanish. "You're dangerously close," she whispered, heart racing like a drum. "Closer," he murmured, leaning in until the tip of his nose brushed hers. Their breaths mingled, hot and sharp, a collision of scents, sandalwood, rain, and something darker she couldn't name. Imani's eyes fluttered shut for a fraction of a second, and in that heartbeat, Jin-woo's lips brushed hers. Not fully, not claiming, but a tantalizing, teasing ghost of a kiss that made her body seize and her knees weaken. Her eyes snapped open. "What?" she started, but he silenced her with a whisper against her lips. "Sure. Just stay," he murmured, his hand sliding slightly down her back, steadying her, grounding her, holding her in a way that was both protective and possessive. Her fingers curled into his coat, gripping him instinctively. "You're insane," she said breathlessly. "And yet," he whispered, his lips brushing hers again, just enough to make her ache for more. "You're still here. You didn't run. You stayed." The chaos of the market faded entirely. Vendors shouted, neon signs blinked, and sizzling woks hissed, but all of it existed in the background. The only reality was him, the heat, the proximity, and the undeniable pull between them. Imani's chest rose and fell rapidly. She wanted to protest, to push him away, to reclaim control. But every fiber of her being wanted to lean in, to explore that dangerous, intoxicating closeness. Jin-woo pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes, dark and intense, holding her gaze as if challenging her. "I want that smile again," he said, voice low, rough with longing. "The one you gave the waiter. But only for me." Her lips trembled. "You're impossible," she breathed. "And yet," he said, stepping even closer, "you like me anyway." Imani swallowed, heart hammering. The line between fury, frustration, and desire blurred. She knew she should leave. She wanted to leave. And yet, part of her was already trapped, caught in the dangerous gravity of Jin-woo Han. For the first time that night, the cage didn't feel like a prison. It felt inevitable. Imani snatched a skewer of spicy rice cake, waving it in front of him like a weapon. "Eat it, if you can handle it." Jin-woo smirked, his eyes dark and amused. "You want me to eat that?" "Yes," she said, smirking back, a hint of challenge dancing in her gaze. "And don't think about faking it." He leaned closer, the tip of his nose brushing hers, their breaths mingling, hot and intoxicating. "You're enjoying this far too much," he murmured, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "I am," she admitted, voice trembling in a way she would never let him see fully. "But you're enjoying it even more." Before she could react, he grabbed the skewer, holding it between them. His thumb brushed hers, and the contact sent an electric jolt straight to her core. The world around them, the shouting vendors, sizzling woks, the smells of fried dough and spicy sauce, faded to nothing. All that existed was him, his heat, and the danger in his dark eyes. Imani's pulse hammered. You're insane," she breathed. "And yet," he whispered, tilting his head so their foreheads almost touched, "you can't pull away." She tried. She really did. She stepped back, then tripped slightly on the uneven pavement. Jin-woo was there in an instant, his hands gripping her waist to steady her. Her back pressed against him. The heat radiating off his body made her knees weak, and she realized, with a jolt of panic, that she wasn't pulling away. "You're too close," she whispered, but her fingers curled into the fabric of his coat, anchoring herself. "Not close enough," he murmured, lips brushing her temple, a teasing, tantalizing touch that made her shiver. Her lips parted, breath hitching. "Jin-woo." "Sure," he breathed, leaning in, his lips hovering over hers. The tip of his mouth brushed hers in a whisper of a kiss. Not claiming, not full, but enough to ignite a fire she didn't know she had. Her heart thundered. She wanted to protest. She wanted to pull back. But instead, her hands rested on his chest, feeling the hard line of muscle beneath his coat, the warmth, the electricity. "You," she started, but he silenced her again with another ghost of a kiss, teasing, torturous, promising more. "I want that smile," he whispered, lips inches from hers, voice low and dangerous. "The one you gave the waiter. But only for me." Her lips trembled. "You're impossible," she breathed. "And yet," he said, stepping even closer, "you're still here. You stayed. You didn't run." The heat between them was suffocating, addictive. She wanted to step back, but every part of her wanted to lean in, to explore the dangerous pull that was Jin-woo Han. The crowded, chaotic market didn't matter. The neon lights, the street smells, the noisy vendors, all of it blurred into the background. Her resolve cracked. She leaned forward, eyes closing for a fraction of a second. And this time, when he captured her lips fully, it wasn't a tease. It was fire. It was claiming. Their lips moved together in a kiss that was impatient, electric, and full of the tension they had been building all night. Jin-woo's hands cradled her face, thumbs brushing over her cheeks, pulling her impossibly closer. Imani wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing into him, the chaos of the night market melting away entirely. When they finally pulled back, both gasping slightly, their foreheads pressed together, she whispered, breathless, "You're insane." "And yet," he murmured, dark eyes glittering with triumph, "you like it." Imani's pulse raced. Her chest ached. And somewhere deep inside, a dangerous thrill settled. She realized she wasn't a victim. She was a queen, and this dark, dangerous man was playing the game she had chosen to join. And for the first time, she wondered, not with fear, but with excitement, what happens when a queen finally decides to take the castle. The sizzling walks and shouting vendors suddenly felt like the perfect backdrop for chaos. Imani tugged on Jin-woo's arm, guiding him through the crowd with mischievous intent. "First challenge," she announced, pointing to a stall selling steaming chicken feet. "Eat that." Without flinching. Jin-woo raised a brow, the corner of his mouth twitching in amusement. "You're trying to humiliate me?" "Absolutely," she said, eyes sparkling. "I've seen billionaires in suits crumble. Let's see if you're one of them." The vendor handed them both a plate, steam curling around their faces. Imani picked up a piece, her expression teasing, daring him to follow suit. Jin-woo smirked, his dark eyes locking onto hers. Slowly, deliberately, he lifted a chicken foot, inspecting it as though it were a priceless artifact, then popped it into his mouth. Imani blinked. "I didn't expect that." He chewed deliberately, tasting it, savoring the challenge, then swallowed. "Your move," he said, his voice low, teasing, almost predatory. Imani hesitated, then took a bite, trying to keep a playful scowl on her face. "You're impossible," she muttered, but the heat in her eyes betrayed her. He leaned closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body, the faint scent of sandalwood and rain. "You like impossible," he murmured. Her fingers brushed his as she reached for a napkin, and electricity shot straight to her chest. She stilled for a heartbeat before snatching it away and tossing it at him. "You're lucky this place is crowded, or I'd." "Kiss you again?" he supplied smoothly, a smirk playing on his lips. Imani's face flushed, and she turned sharply, walking toward another stall. Jin-woo followed, unconsciously closing the distance until his hand brushed hers. She froze. "You're doing that on purpose," she accused. "Am I?" he asked, voice low, teasing. "Or are you just enjoying it?" Her pulse quickened. She rolled her eyes, but the corner of her mouth twitched in spite of herself. "Maybe I am," she admitted, almost under her breath. The night market became a playground. Imani challenged him to eat the spiciest rice cake, which he did with a smirk and a dramatic gasp, earning laughter and applause from the nearby vendors. She dared him to try the sticky taffy-like sweets without using his hands, which ended with him laughing, his dark eyes glinting with challenge as he captured her hand in his to steady himself. Every touch, every accidental brush of skin, sent a jolt of heat through them both. Their teasing banter was sharp, playful, and dangerously intimate. By the time they reached a stall selling hottiak, their hands were intertwined as naturally as breathing. "You realize," she said, tugging lightly on his sleeve, "we've been walking together for an hour and haven't stopped arguing, eating, or causing chaos." "And yet," he replied, fingers tightening slightly around hers, "you're still here. You're not running away." "Not yet." Her breath hitched, and she looked up at him, neon lights reflecting in her eyes. "You're crazy, you know that?" "And yet," he murmured, leaning just close enough that her hair brushed against his lips, "you like it." Imani couldn't help it. Her lips quirked in the faintest, defiant smile, the one he wanted. The one she had reserved for the rarest moments. He caught it instantly, his dark gaze softening for just a second before heat returned. "Good," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face, fingers lingering on her cheek. "Because I intend to see that smile again and again." And in the chaos of the Myeongdong night market, among the noise, the smells, and the crowd, the first night of a dangerous, thrilling game had just begun. The neon glow of the night market faded behind them as Jin-woo led her down a narrow side street, quieter, lined with closed shops and the faint hum of the city at night. Imani's pulse pounded in her ears, not from the walk, but from the electricity that crackled between them. "You brought me here," she said, arms crossed, trying to mask the thrill with irritation. "Street food, chaos, public humiliation. What's next? Are you going to kidnap me into your penthouse next?" "I already did that," he said smoothly, dark eyes glinting. "And you didn't seem to mind." Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat as he stopped in front of a small, tucked-away alleyway cafe, the faint scent of roasted coffee beans and caramel drifting out. He held the door open, an exaggerated bow that made her eye him suspiciously. "I choose this one," he said simply. "No cameras, no distractions. Just us. You'll survive, I promise." She stepped inside, scanning the cozy space. Dim lights, wooden tables, a single barista behind the counter. It was intimate, personal. Nothing like the gilded chaos of the gala, nothing like the suffocating power of his office. Her heartbeat slowed just slightly, though the warmth of him standing close made it quicken again. They sat at a small table near the window, the city lights casting golden highlights across their faces. He ordered coffee for both of them, his fingers brushing hers as she passed him the menu. That touch alone made her stomach flip. "So," she said, leaning back in her chair, adopting her best haughty tone. "This is your idea of a proper date?" "Proper is boring," he said, dark eyes fixed on hers, intense, predatory, and impossible to ignore. "I want unforgettable." "You're insane," she whispered, voice barely more than a breath. "And yet," he murmured, leaning forward, hands resting on the table, "you're still here." Her lips twitched. "You're going to make me regret agreeing to this dinner." He leaned even closer, the space between them shrinking. She felt the heat radiating off him, smelled the faint hint of his cologne, felt the dangerous pull in his gaze. Her defenses, her carefully crafted armor, began to slip. "You know," he said softly, eyes dropping to her lips for just a moment, "I didn't bring you here just for coffee. I wanted to see you away from the world. See the real you. The one that doesn't wear the mask of ice." Her breath caught. She wanted to tell him to stop, that he had no right, but her body betrayed her. The way he looked at her, the way he wanted her, made her shiver. Without thinking, she leaned in slightly, their knees brushing under the table. His hand moved, brushing a strand of hair from her face, lingering just at her jaw. The warmth of his touch was intoxicating, and her pulse raced uncontrollably. "Imani," he whispered, voice low and velvet deep. "I want that smile. The one you gave the waiter. Only for me." Her heart thumped in a chaotic rhythm. She couldn't help it. She wanted to test him, tease him, see how far he would go. So she leaned just a fraction closer, eyes locking with his, lips dangerously near his. The world fell away. No neon lights, no street chaos, no market vendors. There was only him, dark and magnetic, and her, defiant but burning with want. Then he kissed her. Slow. Possessive. Testing. His lips molded over hers, firm but careful, claiming without consuming. Imani froze for a heartbeat, then let herself melt into it, hands tangling in the back of his coat, drawing him closer. The cafe faded to silence around them. Even the distant city noise seemed to hush. When they finally pulled back, foreheads resting together, breaths mingling, she whispered, almost against her will, "You are unbelievable." "And yet," he murmured, dark gaze softening just slightly, "you stayed." Imani felt a thrill of power, of surrender, of something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't a victim. She was a queen. And he was exactly the kind of dangerous, impossible man who could match her fire. Outside, the streets of Seoul continued to hum with life. But inside that small cafe, in the quiet intimacy they carved from the chaos, the real game began. And neither of them would ever be the same again. Do you want me to continue with that next scene? Comment for part 3, subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you're the first to watch it.